Our dear friend, our brother Scott Ritter is here with us. Welcome back, Scott.
How you doing, Nima?
Yeah, yeah. Let me start, Scott, with what is happening right now between Iran and the United States, the war that we were talking about it before. And now everything is happening. We saw what has happened so far and what is happening as we talk. And how do you see the situation? The United States started together with Israel, started with decapitation, as they call the so-called decapitation, the assassination of the leader of Iran, supreme leader of Iran, which is of particular importance for Iran and for the whole region, and some commanders in Iran. How did you see the strategy of the United States and the way that the war is going right now?
Well, let me put it this way. The United States provided Israel with intelligence about the location of Ali Khamenei and other senior Iranian figures. And the first 6 missiles fired by Israel, the first 6 missiles hit Ali Khamenei's residence, killing him and, by some accounts, up to 40 other Iranians, many of whom were senior leadership officials. Now, the goal of this campaign is regime change. And as we have discussed, and I believe I'm on record with you saying that the first thing that will be done is a decapitation strike, and that the number one target will be Ali Khamenei. And I said, I think we're going to kill him. And we did. Now, does this mean we won the war? No, it means the exact opposite. The first 6 missiles that were fired, which successfully carried out a decapitation strike, guaranteed that the United States and Israel will lose this war. They didn't hunt down Ali Khamenei as he was trying to hide from American missiles. You don't get to make the case that this was a coward running away, trying to hide from a fate that was going to be dealt to the Iranian people. You don't have to be the greatest intelligence analyst in the world to find Ali Khamenei at home, publicly available information, meeting openly with other people. We made this man a martyr. And when I say this man, understand that this is the second most revered figure in Shia Islam, the Twelver ideology. The only person that has a higher stature, at least in the eyes of some, would be Sistani, the Grand Ayatollah out of Najaf, Iraq. But Ali Khamenei, again, a lot of people don't understand when we say Vilayat Faqih. I may be mispronouncing that. I hope I said it right. I've practiced it. But the guardianship of the supreme jurist, it's a religious approach that was embraced widely by Ayatollah Khomeini when he created the Islamic Republic. But the notion that, yes, Iran is a constitutional republic, and we'll talk about that in a minute, but it's also an Islamic republic. And therefore, under the Twelver faith, and I don't want to get too much into theology because A, I might get it wrong because I'm not a theologist, and I don't want, and B, we're going down the wrong path. But, the Shia faith is premised on the notion that when Hussein died in the Battle of Karbala, that was the last legitimate imam. And now they are waiting for the return of the Mahdi. And it was a Jesus-like figure. The imam in hiding will come back, and all this. It's their faith, and you have to respect that. But the point is, so in the interim,
Scott, and that they say that he's gonna come with Jesus, and they're gonna come together.
Yes, I know that. I'm not mocking anything. It please me. When I laugh, I'm not laughing at the religion. I'm laughing at my own fundamental ignorance. I have studied this stuff. I really have. I've read everything I can read, but I am so tired right now that when we deal with reality, and especially when we deal with historical reality, there are nuances. I learned a long time ago, even when speaking about the Shia faith, the interpretation of what Hussein did at the Battle of Karbala. Was it an act of martyrdom? Was it an act of selfishness? It's been interpreted over the years by different people. And so then what you have to do is dig even deeper into it to find out which interpretation adheres more closely to reality, as opposed to people trying to spin data to so you have to dig even deeper than that. And so I have spent a large part of my life trying to solve these problems, these and similar problems. And so when I laugh, it's just a reflection of the fact that I'm exhausted and I'm trying to dig deep into an already addled brain and pull that up, and my brain's just sitting there going, meh, meh, meh. You're not going to access this. So I laugh out of frustration to myself because, as I said, I didn't want to enter into this dialogue because I wasn't prepared for it. I wasn't prepared to go this deep. Normally, I would have done the research and awoken brain cells. But the point is, in Iran, when we deal with Vilayat Faqih, we've created the Shia of Iran have created a position of the guardianship of the supreme jurisprudence, Islamic jurisprudence, and this is a man who is the ultimate expression of the Shia faithful until the Mahdi returns. That's what they believe. You can mock it, do whatever. I will never mock it. I'm just saying that's what they believe, and you have to understand that. And many people do believe it. The 12er, adherence to the 12er, faction or whatever. I use wrong words here because I'm not trying to denigrate, but those because there's Ismailism, there's Niners, there's different ways to embrace the Shia faith, and 12er is the most popular, and it's dominant in Iran, it's dominant in Iraq, it's dominant in Azerbaijan. I think it's about a 50% adherence rate in Bahrain and elsewhere throughout. So when we speak of Ali Khamenei as the supreme jurisprudent, we're speaking of a man who is revered like the Pope amongst Catholics. This is not a human being. This is a symbol of God. This is part of their faith. And we assassinated him. We killed him. Now, if I were to put on my CIA advisor hat, I wouldn't work for them, but I've worked with them in the past. I know how they think. I understand how they approach problems. And if I were called upon to advise them, and I believed in what they were trying to do, I would have said the best way to collapse the Iranian regime is to keep Ali Khamenei alive in a bunker hiding from you. And so now you attack his courage. You attack his status as a man. You say what kind of man hides while the people of Iran pay the price for his sins? And you start denigrating him, attacking him, putting out AI-generated imagery of him doing vile things in vile ways. And the goal here is to collapse confidence within Iran to this man, and therefore to Vilayat Faqih, to the Islamic Republic. What you don't do is take a man who has openly said, I am frail, my body is failing, and my highest aspiration is to go out a martyr, and give him the martyrdom he seeks. Ali Khamenei knew he was going to die when he held that meeting. Whether it was that day or the next day, he knew he was going to die. He willingly sacrificed himself because he knew what the outcome would be. He knew that by letting Israel and the United States murder him, that the Iranian people would rally around their faith like they have not rallied around their faith in a long time. Donald Trump, when announcing this operation, spoke of how the United States was going to create the conditions for the people of Iran to rise up and take matters into their own hands, but it would be up to the people of Iran. And so in order to do that, you have to collapse confidence in the government and have the people come out and say, we are ready to replace this government. Today in the cities of Iran, there are crowds of people out there filling the city squares. And they are shouting Khamenei's name. But they're not saying death to Khamenei. They're not saying down with Khamenei. They're saying long live the martyr Khamenei. God praise Khamenei. He is now a martyr, elevated to near sainthood status. And the Iranian people are rallying around him, and they're rallying around the cause of the Islamic Republic. We lost the war the moment we dropped those bombs or those missiles on Ali Khamenei's home. And that's what's happening right now. Everything else is just noise because this is a regime change operation. And it was predicated on the notion that we would decapitate the regime physically. But we don't understand the true nature of this regime. It is an Islamic republic. As we speak, constitutionally, the Islamic Republic, this constitutional republic, this product of one of the most meaningful democratic exercises or expressions in the Middle East. Iran is the most legitimate democracy in the Middle East, the most legitimate democracy in the Middle East. And they have a government that adheres to the Constitution. Ali Khamenei is dead. Constitutionally, the president, the head of the judiciary, and a Islamic jurist selected by the Assembly of Experts create an emergency council. And that council has been created and is governing today. We haven't decapitated anything. You can't decapitate a system that believes in itself. If this was truly about one man, Ali Khamenei, then it'd be over. But this is an Islamic republic that is based upon faith and is based upon a constitution. And the constitution is functioning. And they have a replacement to fill the position of supreme jurisprudence until the Assembly of Experts selects another man. This is the way the system works. The Iranian system is working. So we've achieved nothing. We have decapitated nothing. We are focused on personalities while we disrespect the reality that the Islamic Republic is a system of faith, a system of laws founded in a constitution. Maybe we, the American people who live in what is ostensibly supposed to be a constitutional republic, we have lost faith with our constitution. We no longer function as a republic. Therefore, we're not in a position to recognize when a people who haven't lost faith with who they are and what they are adhere to their constitutional norms, values, and standards. And that's what the people of Iran are doing today. The streets are not filling with people seeking to be empowered by the vile perfidy of the United States and Israel. They're filled with people who are rallying around the cause of Iran, around the cause of the Islamic Republic, around their faith. And they will never be defeated.
Yeah. Scott, the war is happening, the Iranian response started with the Arab states, with the Persian Gulf and Arab states, and then expanded to Israel as well. It seems that the attacks are intensifying in the direction of Israel as time goes by. The major, because they wanted somehow to neutralize Arab states, then go after Israel. They started with that. And here is what General Petraeus said on CNN, is his assessment of that. What do the Arab states in the Persian Gulf have to go against Iran? Because they were begging to Iranian officials, let us hit some locations in the desert, and because we have to show something. Iran said, no, if you do that, you're going to be destroyed. This is the communication between the Arab states and Iran. And what is your understanding of that?
Well, first of all, David Petraeus is one of the dumbest men that walked the face of the earth. He should never gotten 4 stars, let alone be the director of the CIA. He's a disgrace. And he just shows his ignorance of things. The Gulf Arab states were hit not because they're innocent, but because they're guilty. They provided basing for the United States of America that helped set up this conflict. And even though the United States may have temporarily withdrawn troops, there's still infrastructure in place that's plugged into an overall system. For instance, we may not have aircraft at Al Udeid Air Base in Qatar, but we do have a $1.1 billion, or I should say we had a $1.1 billion advanced radar system that was designed to detect Iranian missiles as they launch and feed that detection data into the ballistic missile defense system, protecting Israel and other air bases. So it is a party to the conflict. And the Qatari government didn't insist on it being shut down, dismantled, removed. It operated. The same thing holds with Kuwait. The same thing holds with Bahrain. The same thing holds with the United Arab Emirates. All these places that have been attacked are places that are home to American military installations that have an ongoing role. It's not an active role. And there are other things too. According to some reports, a CIA base of operations in Dubai has been struck because the CIA is actively, again, if people understand the region, I know you do, Dubai is a center of smuggling into and out of Iran. And the CIA is very active in using these smuggling routes to get resources in and out of Iran. So we have a major base there that talks to these Dow operators, that does this, coordinates with the United Arab Emirates government on anti-Iranian operations. The other thing is the Iranians know full well that while these nations were saying you can't use our airspace, you can't use this, behind their backs they were telling the United States, if you're going to attack Iran, kill Iran, finish Iran, get rid of the Iranian regime. And so they were punished. They were punished up front. And it's a signal that we can punish you. Now, the funny thing, again, Petraeus just shows his absolute ignorance. They have aircraft in the air, and they will integrate with the Combined Operations Center and be flown. David, do you think that the Saudi Air Force is capable of launching a penetration mission into Iran and effectively striking targets? What targets would you give the Saudi Air Force? Because I can guarantee you this, those targets won't be hit. They won't be destroyed. The Saudi Air Force cannot perform. Just ask the Houthi. Just ask the Yemeni. Saudi's been bombing the crap out of them since 2014 and achieved nothing because they're not very good. We gave them advanced aircraft. They're not very good. And now we're going to allow these Saudis to interfere with our air campaign, be disruptive of our air campaign. I think not. We've been down this road before. I just want to remind your audience, I've been there, done that, and I have the T-shirt, meaning that during the Gulf War, when Iraqi missiles started striking Gulf Arab states, these states were insistent on being allowed to participate in punitive attacks against Iraq for their national pride. And when we let them, they just screwed it up. I mean, we're talking about getting shot down because they're not very good. Running away in fear, that's another one. They would approach, see the air defense, and turn around and abort the mission, pickle their munitions, return home, saying, we just couldn't make it. I think the airplane was hiccuping. Got to land and get it checked out. And it was very disruptive because targets that should have been struck on time to be part of the campaign progression weren't getting struck. And now we have to take assets in and restrike these targets, et cetera. We're not going to give these Arabs anything to attack because they're not any good. They don't know what they're doing. They can't do it, and they will screw things up. So, if Iran was to say, yeah, you could bomb Fish Island here, we'll give you this target, you drop 3 bombs off the water, take photographs of the splash and claim you're good, that would be face-saving mechanism. We wouldn't care because it's irrelevant. But we're not going to integrate these people in a meaningful fashion into a campaign as complex as this. First of all, to do that, we would have to expose extraordinarily sensitive secrets. There's a lot going on that people don't know about, a lot going on. They would have to be exposed to electronic warfare capabilities of the United States that have been front loaded based upon intelligence information that we've collected through a variety of means, the classification of which is often code word. And you think we're going to give the Saudis access to code word information? You're higher than a kite. We're not going to give anybody access to that. And so, no, these people won't be integrated into this campaign. They'll be sitting there, flying circles in the sky over their capitals, fearful of the next step. Iran has paused, but Iran has paused by saying, stop supporting the American attacks. Stop it. Kick the Americans out of your country. I believe that's the Iranian demand. Kick the Americans out of your country. If you fail to do so, then you are part of the problem, not part of the solution, and we will continue to attack you. And so that, I think, you're going to see as the next phase. While they're doing this pause on the Arabs, and let me just say one more thing about the Arabs. It's funny. The Arabs are very mad. No, Nima, the Arabs are very afraid. They're very afraid right now because they are seeing vulnerabilities. They are seeing these despicable, despotic despots who govern these Gulf Arab states being exposed as the fat perverts that they are. These rich perfume princesses that just run around and steal money and live the high life while the rest of their people live the low life, who fly to London to whore and take drugs and drink booze and then return pretending they're pious Muslims. They're being exposed for what they are, rats, human rats. And the murder of Ali Khamenei, the martyrdom of Ali Khamenei, has empowered the Shia of these respective Gulf sheikdoms in a way that never has before. This is an existential fight. And what they're afraid of, I'll tell you what the Khalifa of Bahrain are afraid of, is that the majority Shia population there marches on the royal palace and kills them all, which may be their fate. They may end up running to Saudi Arabia, but Saudi Arabia has to be worried because there is a lot of Shia in the eastern provinces that can rise up and take over the oil fields, where the bulk of the oil fields are. Kuwait has to be worried. The United Arab Emirates have to be worried. That's what's happening here. These guys are scared to death because Iran has initiated something that they can't control. See, they like the Abraham Accords because the Abraham Accords creates the fiction of, the Gulf Arab states, being for the benefit of the people. But what it means is that they've literally knelt before Israel and kissed the ring of Israel and accepted the notion of greater Israel, but they're going to bribe their people through the perception of economic prosperity. But what Iran has done now is exposed the inconsistencies and the lies and the hypocrisy of these tyrants. And it could, in fact, mean the end of one, if not more, maybe all of these pedophile despots. And that's what they are. I mean, these are not good people. These are not moral people. These are people who live the most despicable lifestyle imaginable. One that is, fueled by greed, lust, avarice, and oil money. These guys are just awash in oil money. We used to go around. We had something called Operation 10 Cup when we were as a weapons inspection, and everybody wanted to get on Operation 10 Cup. Richard Butler, come on, Richard, sue me. I love the discovery. Richard Butler, as the executive chairman, loved Operation 10 Cup because part of it was going around the Gulf and asking for donations, because the United Nations Special Commission was funded not by the direct UN budget, but by donations by member states who said, we specifically fund the operations of the weapons inspectors. And one place that they would always go is Kuwait. And it was very hard. I thought I wanted to go on that, but I had second thoughts, and because it wasn't what I do. I mean, I'm a weapons inspector. I'm not a diplomat running around begging for money. But I know, I'm not going to name their names, but they know who they are. And they were falling all over themselves to go with Richard Butler on Operation 10 Cup, because you would go on the Emir's yacht, and the Emir's yacht was full of pious people when you were at the pier. And then when the yacht crossed over the territorial boundaries, the booze came out and they were just having a party. And the Emir brought out the gold Rolexes. And he gave gold Rolexes to every member of the UMSCOM party. And Richard Butler went on at least 3 of these Operation 10 Cups, and he got a gold Rolex every single time, and he never declared it. Australian government, I don't know what the statute of limitations is on undeclared assets, but you might want to look at Richard Butler's gold watches and the gold watches of the others. I mean, it's just bribery, but it shows how despicable these people are and how wealthy they are and how ridiculous they are. And these gold watches weren't used. They didn't. I mean, it wasn't the Emir saying, I'm sorry, I'm short on American dollars. Here's a gold watch. Take it to New York City and sell it for $40,000 and apply that money to send Scott Ritter into harm's way in Iraq so he can find the hidden weapons of mass destruction. That I would support. It was, hey, Richard Butler, we're playing the game, aren't we? We're living the life, aren't we? Here's a $40,000 wristwatch, because what the hell? We're here just living the big life. We're fooling the Americans. We're doing everything right. We're getting away with slant drilling and robbing the Iraqis blind. So here's $40,000 bribe to keep your frickin' mouth shut about what's really going on. And other inspectors or other members of the UNCON staff took those watches as well. This is who we're doing. This is the reality of don't get me going about the Khalifa family in Bahrain and their sexual perversions. What they do with the Gulf Air stewardesses that they recruit. They use them as their own private pool of their own harem, the prostitutes. They set them up in apartment buildings so that they can, sexually please them, every month. This is who they are. Leave Bahrain, drive the causeway over into Saudi Arabia, and start counting the mosques you see at the end of the causeway that are built by pious Saudis who are leaving Bahrain, understanding the sins that they have committed. This is who we are dealing with here, and this is who the Iranians are dealing with. I'm not saying the Iranians are perfect. There's plenty of information that Iranian ayatollahs and imams are as human and fallible as the next people. There's evidence of corruption. There's evidence of prostitution. There's evidence of any wrongdoing because they're human beings. But the Islamic Republic of Iran is not systemically flawed like the Saudi kingdom, the kingdom of Saudi Arabia. The Iranians are pious people. Look at Ahmadinejad, who apparently was killed, by the way, the former president. He was living the most humble life possible. I mean, this is a man who could have empowered himself with riches, and he was living the life of a simple pensioner, minding his own business. He was murdered by the Israelis and by the Americans because they're angry at the role he played in getting the Iranian nuclear program up to where it was. He's the guy that was the president when all of the breakthroughs took place. So they murdered him because they're angry at him for doing that which he was legally allowed to do. They murdered him. But this wasn't a man who was sitting in retirement surrounded by pretty women and drinking booze on the side. This is a pious man who was living the life of a pious pensioner, a simple life. And we murdered him. We murdered him. We murdered him. The Iranians are literally a step above the Gulf Arab nations. I'm not picking on the Arab people themselves. I would never do that. But what I am saying is that the Arab people have allowed themselves to be governed by these despicable monarchies for far too long. These monarchies that have nothing to do with democracy, nothing to do with serving the people, but exploiting the natural resources of their countries for their own personal benefits. Go to
And
London.
you're talking about the leadership of these Arab states, because
Yes,
we know
100%.
the people, they're different, and we have to draw that line between the leadership and the people who are living in these countries. Scott, you've mentioned that the first 6 bombs were shot by Israelis, and what is your understanding of the attack on this, girls' school, and they murdered these little, girls in the school, more than 100, and if I'm not mistaken, 12 of these kids were killed in that school. What was that? How could that happen in such an operation?
Again, purely speculation, based upon my understanding of how targeting in support of a strategic air campaign works. When we launched Operation Desert Storm against Iraq in January of 1991, each target that we struck, I mean, we had a plan. And the plan had been programmed out for a long time. Aircraft were going to take off with specific munitions on board to fly a strike profile to drop a bomb on a target that was identified. And there was a reason to hit the target. We had a package of intelligence that said, this is what the target is, this is what the target does. And then we were dropping the bomb to achieve results on the ground that would impact the ability of the target to do what it was to do. And we designed the impact points. My job was to review the targets after they were bombed to see if we actually had those impact points. Did we get the observable indication of success? But I was familiar with everything that we were, I read all the target packages. These were viable targets. These were all legitimate targets under the law of war, and they were well defined. As the war went on, and we started blowing up these targets, a couple things happened. One, we move on to follow-on targets. But 2, you get derivative targets, meaning if you blew up a building, but the Iraqis had evacuated the building, now you have to look for evacuation sites. So you start collecting intelligence about where these evacuation sites are, et cetera. If you're going after leadership targets and they aren't in the primary building you blew up, you're starting to look for them. I was involved in one, retargeting effort involving Saddam Hussein. I was summoned to a meeting with Prince Turki, the head of Saudi intelligence. General Waller, the deputy commander, was there, and I was briefed by Turki of sensitive intelligence that the Saudis had about the movement of Saddam Hussein from Baghdad into Basra for some high-level meetings. And I was given a description of the building that he was supposed to be in on a given time frame. And my job was to find that building, create a target package, and put bombs on that building and kill Saddam. And I spent some time doing it. We're under time frame. I'm rushed. And so I'm sitting here working with a very capable photo interpreter, and we come up with 3 targets that meet the criteria. And I wrote them up and I submitted them, and we dropped bombs on all 3 targets. Now, right off the bat, that 2 of the targets aren't the target. Let's say that I got it right, and one of them was the target. 2 of them aren't. And what we're looking for are residences. So I blew up 2 homes automatically that were full of innocent people, had nothing to do with Saddam. The third one, if it was Saddam, we're going to kill innocent people anyways. But this was considered to be collateral damage, acceptable damage. It turns out that Saddam didn't make the trip, and we blew up 3 homes and we killed at least 3 families. That's how this happens. But this normally happens later in the air campaign, when chaos has taken over the war, and now we're looking for targets that aren't well defined. We're looking for concepts, and we're trying to meet concepts, put it into physical place on the ground, and achieve destruction. The reason why it doesn't happen up front is because you normally have a very well developed target plan and such. For Israel to strike these targets, or CENTCOM, I think it was actually the Americans who struck it, because the schools in southern Iran, in Minab, I believe. So it was the United States that struck it. What it means is that we were given a problem set, suppression of Iranian missile launch capabilities, because if it's in Minab, that's what it's related to. And we're looking for not just launch locations, but command and control locations, etc. And some targeteers, photo analysts, looked at this building and made a determination that this building was a command and control facility. Maybe they saw something, maybe there's something cool. I don't know the intelligence, but somebody determined that this building is a target worthy of putting missiles into. And it was a deliberate action. And it tells you that our intelligence is horrible. Because for us to believe that a active secondary school for girls age 6 to 12 is a command and control target, it means we got it completely wrong, which now we roll into the bombs that are dropping. If we got it that wrong, that means we got everything wrong. That means we're blowing up nothing. We're blowing up targets that the Iranians fed to us. Again, I just have to go off of past experience. Amr Rashid al-Ubaidi was the minister of oil, but he's also the guy who used to be the director of the Iraqi Military and Industrial Commission. And we were having a talk, I think, in the 1993 timeframe, and he was getting frustrated with me because I kept coming in and carrying out these inspections that kept exposing the Iraqis as liars on the periphery. But he said, look, so you blow us up in the war, you blow everything up, you blow up our files, you blow up everything, and we're trying to reconstitute things, and we tell you a story that's based upon incomplete data that we have. And you, being the brilliant Scott Ritter that you are, tear our story apart, and you find inconsistencies, and you carry out inspections that show that we were wrong. And then you come here and you call me a liar to my face. I said, well, you told me a story that turned out not to be true, and I can prove that it's not true now. And he said, oh, the great Scott Ritter, you're so awesome. Do you know that how easily I can control you? He said, I know, for instance, that you are reliant upon a certain stream of information that comes from Kurds. He said, so what if I set up a special cell? And we said, how can we get Scott Ritter, how can we take control of his inspections? And this special cell creates intelligence, and we do a good job. We get the photographs, we get everything, and we let it be discovered by the Kurdish stream, and that data makes it to you. And then you start inspecting these sites. We now own you, because now we know the cause and effect relationship, and we own you. And we're going to control your inspections. And later on, they did exactly that to certain inspections. They took control of the inspection process by controlling the flow of data. the reason why I bring this up is that the Iranians are full of very clever people. And they've been preparing for this war for a long time. They've been watching the United States fight wars in Iraq and Syria and Afghanistan. They understand how we collect intelligence. They understand how we collect intelligence. And they have been feeding us false streams of intelligence for some time now that has prompted us to build target decks where we are expending precious resources to blow up things that simply don't exist. The Iraqis did this during the counter Scud campaign in Western Iraq. The Iraqis knew when we started getting resources over that they were going to have trouble getting a window of launch opportunity, or else they had to get hit. So what they would do is they created a decoy unit that would set up fixed decoy sites that would get our attention, and we'd send bombers there. And then they'd do a mobile decoy site, meaning they'd have targets moving that would be detected, that reported on, and the rest of the resources came here. And while we were out there bombing fixed decoys and going after mobile decoys, the two real launchers snuck out of Al Qaim, fired their missiles against Israel, and escaped away and got away with it. This is what Iran is doing. Iran is running a campaign of this sophistication, etc. You take a look at a lot of the imagery that Israel has published about blowing up Iranian launchers. These are decoy launchers put out there by the Iranians to absorb that. They put out information about fixed locations, and the Israelis are bombing these fixed locations. The Americans are bombing these fixed locations, but there's nothing in those buildings. They've been evacuated long ago. We may on occasion get it right and blow something up, but that's okay because the Iranians have a system that is, has enough depth to absorb losses and keep functioning. And we see it keep functioning today. The Iranians have been preparing for this campaign for a long, long, long time. The bombing of this school is indicative of the fact that we don't have a clear intelligence picture. Now, people say, well, Scott, we were good enough to get Ali Khamenei on the first day. We weren't that good, guys. He was sitting at home. He wanted to be killed. We fell into his trap. Ali Khamenei, a man who probably had cancer, a man who has openly said that his body is failing him, died a martyr's death. And in doing so, he saved the Islamic Republic of Iran because the people now have rallied around that cause like they've never done before. That's proof positive the way that the Iranians have exploited our system of war. We thought we were carrying out a decapitation strike with the first 6 missiles, but we guaranteed we lost the war. And the Iranians guaranteed we lost the war too, because all we did is turn Ali Khamenei into a martyr.
Yeah. As we talk, Scott, we've learned that Iran has hit 3 tankers, British and the US tankers in the Persian Gulf, in the Strait of Hormuz, because they're aware that they have, nobody can pass this strait because there's some sort of blockade happening there. And how do you see, and I'm sure that you've seen the picture, the footage is coming out of Israel, Tel Aviv is just getting into, some really serious missiles are hitting Tel Aviv. Iran, Tehran they're hitting Tehran as well. How do you see, as it seems to me that Iran has started with a strategy they had at the end of the 12-day war, not going that with, intensifying the battlefield, going little by little and gradually increasing the number of missiles that they can fire at Israel.
Well, a couple things. First of all, let's look at Tehran. What is Israel blowing up today? They're blowing up known locations. They're blowing up the police academy, the police barracks. They're blowing up the Revolutionary Guard Command headquarters building. Do you think that the police woke up this morning and said, let's all go to work at the police station today and sit there and let the Israelis kill us? Nope. They're dispersed. Do you think anybody was in the Revolutionary Guard Command building? Nope. So Israel is blowing up empty targets. What did Iran hit yesterday? I'll mispronounce the name, but Beit Shabin.
Beit. It's called. Let me find it. It's Beit Shemaim. It's something like that.
Yeah, I'm again.
I'll check it out here.
I
Yeah.
mispronounced my own name, so I will definitely fumble everything else out there. This is what you get when you get a Marine talking to you about complex things. The brain doesn't necessarily translate it into words that are discernible. But the point is that building that was struck is supposedly where senior Israeli leaders, combat leaders, were meeting to have a conference about this conflict.
Beit Shemesh. Beit
Pardon?
Shemesh.
Beit
Beit
Shemesh.
Shemesh.
So I wasn't too. I said Beit Shabin, Beit Shemesh, Beit Shabin, Shemesh, tomato, tomato, potato, potato. We know what we're talking about. The point is the site was struck by the Iranians, and there are casualties. So the people they wanted to hit are in there. If I know the Israelis the way I know the Israelis, that decision to go to that building was made at the last second for operational security reasons. And there were at least like 3 targets or 3 places they could have gone to. And that morning, they made the decision to go to this place. And then they were struck. The Iranians did this on purpose because now the Israelis are saying, somebody knew about this. Somebody knew that we went there, the meeting we're going to have, the time frame, and they hit us with a missile that we couldn't shoot down. This scares the living dog poop out of the Israelis. The Iranians are hitting targets in Israel, all of which show that level of knowledge and power. Get back to the school. We don't know what we're bombing. We don't know what we're bombing. The Israelis now know that the Iranians know exactly what they're bombing, and they're hitting it. It's very frightening. And this is what was happening at the end of the...
This is the picture, Scott. This is the picture of that building that you just mentioned. You see, they hit just this target, and you see the devastation that has happened.
Yeah, they got them. War is tragic, but, the Israelis started this, sow the wind, reap the whirlwind. They should read their own Bible. The Iranians at the end of the 12-day war were achieving this very same result. If you remember, the volume of missiles had dropped, but the missiles that Iran was firing, they were all hitting their target. They had exhausted the air defense systems, and they were firing missiles that were designed to defeat the air defense systems. And the targets they were hitting were targets that, to the average layperson, going, that's just sort of that's a random building you hit in Beersheba. Why would you hit that? But the Israelis went, holy cow, they hit the one place that was important, where we were doing things that, when they hit the hospital, remember when they hit the hospital, and everybody's trying to say, oh, you hit a hospital. Well, actually, you hit a command and control center that the Israelis put in the hospital on purpose to try and disguise it, which is a war crime. But once you put the command and control center there, the hospital is no longer protected, and the Iranians hit it saying, we know what you're doing. And the Israelis went, they know what we're doing. And the other thing that the Israelis realized is we can't win. If this goes on, they're inside our decision-making cycle. We're going to lose. Hence, Bibi Netanyahu's hand shaking when he talks about bringing the war to an end, calling up President Trump, begging for a ceasefire because Israel had lost the war. Well, what Iran is doing is picking up right where they left. They're showing that they have the intelligence streams that tell them in near real time what the Israelis are doing. They're showing them that they have the missiles that can hit Israel precisely in a timely fashion. And they're just proving to Israel that they have lost this war. And Israel has lost this war. This is the evidence. And they're doing the same with the United States. They're hitting targets. As I said, there's nothing random about these targets. People are like, why did they hit a hotel in Dubai? Why would you hit a civilian target? It turns out it was a CIA station. That's why they hit it. Why would you hit in Oman? Hit a port facility? Because the 2 warehouses they hit were used by the United States government in a secret deal that was cut with the Omani government. They just happened to blow up the 2 warehouses that the United States had contracted for, which means they have insight into what the United States is doing. Mistakes are made, and war is war. Drones can be hit as they come in, fly off target, and strike a target they're not meant to hit. Intelligence can be bad, although the Iranians have yet to be exposed to have the kind of intelligence failure that the United States had in striking a girls' school. It's so far, it appears the Iranians are hitting targets that are legitimate targets, and they're having great impact. And it's scaring the hell out of these Gulf Arab states. One of my greatest moments in recent history was a discussion I had yesterday with Mario Nafal. I don't know if you saw it. He's a very pro-Israeli commentator, openly hates Iran, and he tends to put out just a bunch of crap. And so I'm trying to set the record straight with him on a number of things. But, he was sort of in his confident, cocky self about, whether the Iranians would be hitting Gulf Arab. I said, no, you guys are all targets. You're all guilty. You're all sinners. And Iran, and he's like, no, they would never do. And while we're talking, you see him come to the realization that he lives in Dubai, and Dubai is being struck. And you see the look on his face as he realized, I'm a target. Yeah, you are. So is anybody who is complicit with Israel in the United States on this illegal war of aggression. And we never need to lose face of that. This is an illegal war of aggression. An illegal war of aggression, the highest war crime imaginable, one that got Nazi Germans hung by the neck until dead at the end of World War II. And it's not just that, but it's we have enhancement factors that factor in, such as the war crime of perfidy, where the United States created a white flag of truce and got the Iranians to operate under this truce while we attacked them. The surprise attack, the cowardly surprise attack carried out by Israel and the United States while Donald Trump pretended to engage in diplomacy. Diplomacy, by the way, you hear Donald Trump tell the lies. The man is just a straight up liar. And he's talking about the negotiations and what Iran is doing. He's a liar. Everything he said was a lie. The Iranians had actually provided a deal to the Omanis that was acceptable to Witkoff and Kushner, except Witkoff and Kushner aren't there to accept. They're there to draw the process out as part of an act of perfidy. But the Iranians had basically agreed to something that would make it permanently impossible for them to get a nuclear weapon, that their nuclear program would be very much limited and even within the scope and scale of those limitations, only able to do that which is supportable of the peaceful nuclear energy program with inspections, no sunset clauses, no expansion, no this, no nothing. Very limited program, the elimination of all enriched uranium stockpiles under verification of UN IA inspectors with American inspector enhancements, AMAT. And the Iranians had agreed to all of that. And yet, as the Omani diplomats were flying to the United States to finalize this deal, we bombed Iran. Perfidy. One last thing about the nuclear program, just to show the stupidity of the United States. We claim that Iran is pursuing a nuclear weapons program, but we know, and it has been acknowledged by many, that Ali Khamenei, as the supreme jurisprudent, had issued at least 2 fatwas that prohibited Iran from pursuing nuclear weapons, saying that they are incompatible with Islam. And these fatwas conformed with a similar fatwa issued by Khomeini at the end of the Iran-Iraq war. If you remember discussions we had here where we were talking about the status of the Iranian program in the fall of 2024, fall and spring of 2024 and spring of 2025, I said that the Iranians were creating capability that made them a threshold state, 60% enriched uranium. And I talked about the sentiment of many senior Iranians, including those who were influential to the supreme leader, who said that Iran should do away with the fatwa, that there are religious cutouts that will allow them to pursue nuclear weapons because of emergent existential conditions. And yet, at the end of the day, according to a conversation I had with the Iranian president this past September, to a question I asked him, he said that Iran doesn't want a nuclear weapon, that we have made a decision that a nuclear weapon will not strengthen us, it will weaken us, that our deterrence is our ballistic missile system. And he said, but also it's incompatible with Islam, and we are an Islamic republic, and our supreme leader has said so. Well, the supreme leader is now dead. Theory of an existential crisis has become reality. Iran is literally fighting for its life, the Islamic Republic. And the three-person committee that has been formed by the Iranian president includes as its senior jurist, a man who very well may become the next supreme leader, somebody who has articulated that Iran should do away with the law that prohibits nuclear weapons, and that Iran should be permitted to build nuclear weapons, that nuclear weapons under the conditions that exist are permissible under Islamic jurisprudence. So we killed the one guy that said no to nuclear weapons, and we've now empowered Iran, empowered a man who believes that Iran has a right to pursue nuclear weapons. And I can guarantee you this, we don't know where Iran's 60% of uranium stockpiles are. We don't know where Iran set up additional cascades of IR-6, IR-8 advanced centrifuges. We don't know if Iran has converted that 60% enriched uranium stockpile they had into 92, 94, 96% enriched uranium, which can serve as the fissile core of a nuclear bomb, 5 to 10 nuclear bombs, depending on how much 60% enriched uranium was out there. We were told that Iran had the ability to rapidly create a nuclear weapon, that they had solved all of the warhead problems. And so Iran has warheads that have been built that can be loaded up with uranium if that decision was made and delivered against an Israeli target. So Donald Trump is one of the dumbest men on the planet, one of the truly stupidest men on the planet, advised by some of the dumbest people in the world. He doesn't understand arms control. He doesn't understand non-proliferation. He doesn't understand the foundational concepts and precepts that are attached to it. If he did, he would realize that the best way to keep a nuclear weapon out of Iran's hands is to continue to have Iran adhere to the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty and make the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty workable for Iran. And we had a deal in place that would have done that. This would have been the better deal, because the JCPOA was always fundamentally flawed, not because of what Iran did or Iran negotiated, but because of the duplicity of the United States. People never reflect on the fact that Barack Obama, the man who signed, or at least signed off on the JCPOA in July of 2015, in April 2015, gave an interview to NPR where somebody asked a question about the sunset clauses, because Barack Obama was saying, well, we have created something that provides a 1-year breakout window, meaning that if Iran decided to break out, we'd have 1 year to respond. But that time frame collapses as the sunset clauses mature and Iran could deploy advanced centrifuges, increase the amount of uranium stockpiles, et cetera. Suddenly that 1 year window evaporates. And people said, well, what about that? What happens when we reach those windows? And Barack Obama said, well, we will, of course, revisit this issue. And if Iran hasn't changed the way it behaves, meaning voluntarily walked away from its nuclear program, then we will relook at the JCPOA. Meaning it wasn't a real deal. It was always duplicity, always duplicity. It was a fundamentally flawed deal. So now Donald Trump could walk in and say, I have come away with a deal that actually solves the Iranian nuclear problem once and for all. Except it was never about Iran's nuclear program. It was always about regime change. Always about Israel dictating strategic priorities to the United States. And that's the saddest statement right there, is that this war, this illegal war of aggression, this act of perfidy wasn't done to advance American national security prerogatives or priorities. It was done to advance Israeli security priorities. This is not America first. This is America last. This is America subordinate itself to Israel. And, it's one thing if Israel wants to commit suicide, but it's another thing they're trying to bring the United States down with them.
Yeah, here is, Scott, what U.S. Senator Tim Kaine said about Donald Trump and his attack on Iran. Yeah, Scott, if it seems that the escalation is happening as we talk, and it seems that Iran gonna, there were some attacks on USS, Abraham Lincoln, aircraft carrier, and
not really.
How do you see the escalation?
Missions.
Yeah, if something happens, some escalation happens, it gets people killed, the crew member, all these sort of escalation that can bring some sort of pressure. How do you see if things go in that direction?
Well, first of all, I think that the United States understands the consequences of losing an aircraft carrier. That's why the Abraham Lincoln is so far removed from Iranian shores. So far that some people believe that their aircraft have been unable to participate in this campaign. the Iranian drones that were sent out were probing drones. It wasn't a drone attack on the aircraft carrier. They were drones sent out to probe the air defense systems to collect intelligence about radar performance and detection capacity and things of that nature. But until the United States brings the carrier strike group within range of Iran's hypersonic maneuvering warheads on their counter ship missiles, not going to sink the Abraham Lincoln. You're not going to sink anything, which is why we're keeping them sort of away. It's just, it's a recognition that the carrier battle group is not a viable thing. The Gerald Ford's aircraft aren't participating in strikes against Iran. They're participating in ballistic missile suppression operations, providing a combat air patrol scheme, et cetera. They may participate in strikes against Hezbollah if Hezbollah becomes more involved. But likewise, they'll be well out of the range of any Hezbollah anti-shipping missiles parked off the coast of Israel where nobody can touch them, because we recognize this. I just want to observe, if anybody goes back and looks at that, look at Jake Tapper's smirk. I mean, Tim Kaine's speaking truth and Jake Tapper's smirking because he is an Israeli asset. CNN is an Israeli asset. They're an asset of, make Israel first. It's typical of mainstream media. This is why shows like yours are so important. So people can gain access to alternative data that is, brought in a straightforward, unbiased way. You can't go on mainstream media and get anything serious because, first of all, you get Tim Kaine, who I can guarantee you I could ask questions where he'd say that Ali Khamenei is the worst person in the world. The Iranian regime is horrible. They slaughter their people, which means he's part of the problem, not the solution, because he can't articulate accurately about the reality of Iran. So, the fact is that Donald Trump has gone to war in violation of the Constitution, in violation of international law, in violation of everything, and there will be a political price to pay. If you listen to Donald Trump's recorded message that he issued after the bombing began, compare that to Donald Trump in campaign mode. When he was running for president at this time, he was putting in extraordinary long hours, and yet he'd finish each day in a campaign stop where he was out there doing the stupid YMCA dance and talking with energy. His voice might have been hoarse, but he was energized. He was there. He believed. And look at the fat old man that was speaking to you as he delivered a message that he doesn't believe any of it. He understands he's a defeated man because he knows that this was a war that was thrust upon him by Israel. He was warned by his commanders, we can't win this war, but he couldn't. He was powerless to stop this war. And so now he's trying to sell it. And even as he sold it, he was casting the blame for the failure on the Iranian people. We will have opened the door, but it's up to you to rise up and finish the job. So if he doesn't achieve regime change, he'll say it's the fault of the Iranian people, not his fault. He said we will lose lives. Well, the Department of Defense has already acknowledged that we lost at least 3 lives. 3 American service members were killed in combat operations against Iran. We don't have any other detail than that. But I'm sure that they won't be the last. And as the Iranians start to ratchet down their target deck, they're going to start hitting targets of great sensitivity. They start killing Americans. What Donald Trump doesn't realize is there's nothing he could do to prevent that. Threaten to blow up more buildings in Iran, kill more school children. You're dealing with a nation of martyrs. That was the problem with killing Ali Khamenei, because you converted a nation of believers into a nation of martyrs. These people celebrate the martyrdom of Hussein at the Battle of Karbala. And the greatest honor they would have would be to fight side by side with Hussein, in heaven. And so, we can't beat these people. First of all, we don't have a legitimate cause. We're not doing anything. They haven't done anything wrong. They pose no threat to us. And we're trying to accomplish a mission of regime change that we lost the moment we dropped the first bombs by martyring Ali Khamenei, a willing martyrdom, by the way. I just want to point that out. He wasn't running and hiding. He was at home saying, here I am. And we killed him. And I believe his last words would have been, thank you, because you just helped him serve his people in the greatest way possible with the last remaining moments of his life. a man who lived for 86 years, serving his people, serving his religion, serving his faith. You allowed him to deliver the greatest service possible. Through his sacrifice, through his martyrdom, the people of Iran are rallying around the government like could never have been imagined. And so, yes, the people of Iran are standing up and taking matters into their own hands, Donald Trump. They're saying, hell no to you. They're saying, we won't surrender. They're saying, you have been defeated. And now Donald Trump is looking regime change in the eyes because this double-edged sword is going to cost him his presidency. This failed war of aggression. There are people like Tim Kaine right now who are hunting for this man. And, he will lose the House, so he will be impeached. The last 2 years of his presidency will be spent before the Congress dealing with impeachment. And if he loses this war bad enough, and there's every reason to believe he may lose control of the Senate, and therefore he could become convicted. And his political legacy will not only be to be a failed president, but a convicted president who spends his last days not in the White House or the Oval Office, but in federal prison.
Scott, which country in the Persian Gulf, these Arab states, is the most important for the United States? Because from what I've seen so far, Bahrain is getting hit like hell. What is in Bahrain that is not, because every time you see something in the news, the Bahrain is getting hit. And what is that?
Again, first of all, it's headquarters of the Fifth Fleet, naval support activity. And the Fifth Fleet is the principal command of Central Command in the region, in the Persian Gulf region. And so it's the nerve center. So they're striking, Muharraq, the place where the Fifth Fleet was headquarters. But most importantly, Bahrain is a vast majority Shia population that is dead set against the Khalifa family. If you recall, a couple of years ago, Saudi Arabia had to send Saudi Arabian troops into Bahrain to suppress popular uprising against the Khalifa family. Why is Iran doing this? I personally believe that Iran is doing this to precipitate a Shia uprising that overthrows the Khalifa family. And what they're trying to do is, again, play the regime change card in reverse, to play it back and say, boom, regime change in Bahrain. And now all Gulf Arab states are vulnerable because now people will look at Bahrain and say, we are empowered. And they'll look at the continued corruption and weakness of these regimes that continue to be attacked by Iran. And there will be more regime change operations. I think the Iranians are playing the regime change card in reverse, and that Bahrain will be the first card they're trying to flip.
Yeah, as we talk, just moments ago, we've learned that the green zone in Baghdad, housing the U.S. embassy, is being stormed by pro-Iranian protesters. It's not just in Baghdad. We see in Pakistan the same thing happening. Yeah. These sort of, I don't know if they do have any sort of, did they think about all of these consequences?
No, Nima, you're dealing with ideologues. Again, these are the same people that advised President Trump on Russia. And we've had conversations before about just how ignorant Trump is about the reality of Russia, how ignorant the American people are about the reality of Russia. And the American people are as equally ignorant or even more ignorant about the reality of Iran. I mean, whenever I tell people that Iran is a functioning democracy, I get this derisive laughter. Yeah, you're a propagandist. No, you're just stupid. We haven't thought things out. When you have Pete Hegseth, whose singular focus in life is bench pressing 315 pounds, now up there cheerleading for this war, he speaks in superlatives. He's out there. We're going to do this. We're going to come in like we've never come before. Hell hath no fury, like a da 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 da. But the foundation of this campaign is ignorance, stupidity. Anybody who thought that you could achieve regime change by assassinating Ali Khamenei in his home means you don't know anything about the region. And then we turn around and we bomb. Remember, the reason why they're storming the green zone isn't just because of the assassination of Ali Khamenei, it's that we have bombed Baghdad. It's part of the war. We have bombed Baghdad. We have bombed the headquarters of the popular militias. By the way, who have their roots not in Iran, you morons, but in Ali Sistani. Go look at 2014 when ISIS was barreling down through Tikrit on Baghdad. The Iranians were articulating, but the man who made the mobilization of the popular militias possible and the loyalty to whom the vast majority of the militias had early on was Ali Sistani in Najaf. He's the one who brought them up. And so not only had they assassinated Ali Khamenei and all the pro-Iranian militias are against them, but now they have bombed the headquarters of the popular militias that are loyal to Ali Sistani. And we've totally lost the script. And this is, again, I don't want any Americans hurt, although they probably will be, but this is necessary for the cleansing of the American cancer from the Middle East. America is a cancer in the Middle East. We bring nothing good to the Middle East. Everything we touch dies. We are horrible. We need to be thrown out of the Middle East, and we have created the conditions which Iran is going to seek to accomplish that. There's a reason why they bomb these Arab nations, and that's because they've told them, you must cleanse yourself of the American presence, or we will continue to attack you as a part of the problem, not part of the solution. And now in Iraq, I think you're going to see a cleansing of the American presence. There was a time when Donald Trump could send an airborne battalion and a Marine battalion to reinforce the green zone. He can't do that now. You can't assemble forces in Kuwait because they'll be blown up. You can't fly aircraft in. You can't land aircraft. You can't do anything because Iran's got your number.
Scott, before wrapping up, how did you find the reaction of China and Russia so far?
What do you want them to do? I mean, that's the thing. I mean, there's
just politically, how did you find them? Because they were talking at the UN Security Council. China was condemning, what the United States is doing, is saying that, the United States is all about regime change and, making chaos in the Middle East.
But they're right. And this is what they can do. Look, China and Russia have their own strategic national security concerns, one of which is keeping Iran as a member of BRICS. It's very important. Russia has a north-south economic corridor that links St. Petersburg with Iranian ports. China has opened up the new Silk Road that links Western China with Tehran through rail. Both nations view Iran as a very important part of the developing Eurasian Economic Union. So they want Iran to be kept in. Russia has signed a strategic security framework that has a military component to it, and Russia has been living up to its obligations. China, I don't know if they've signed a formal agreement, but has been also sending in military capabilities. But these are not, treaties. These are not alliances. Neither Russia nor China is going to militarily get engaged in this fight directly. I don't think they need to. I think they realize that Iran has the wherewithal to fight this out, to last this out. Their job is to look at their interests, because what I just said about North-South Economic Corridor, New Silk Road, these are economic interests. The role of China and Russia is to ensure that when this conflict ends, that the greatest degree of economic stability still exists in the region and in the world. They need to prevent this existential war of survival from spilling over into economic targets. The Strait of Hormuz is one thing. That's an on and off switch, meaning that the moment Iran decides that they aren't going to close it, they'll hit the on switch and traffic can go through. What they need to prevent is Iran striking Saudi oil fields, Azeri oil fields, United Arab Emirates oil fields, etc. And they need to prevent the United States and Israel, out of frustration, striking Iranian oil fields. So this is their role right now, is to keep this war from expanding and creating a venue, a vector for diplomatic resolution to this problem. At some point in time, one of the parties is going to get punch drunk and say, we got to stop this war. It's probably going to be the United States when we run out of ammunition and we realize we can't defeat Iran. And we'll be doing it on behalf of Israel, which will have absorbed well over the 700 limit of ballistic missiles, and they will be in great pain. And Russia and China's job is to be able to step in and facilitate that very diplomatic off-ramp. And so I think that's what their role is, and they're setting the foundation of diplomacy. So when that window of opportunity opens up, they'll be able to step in and deliver.
Thank you so much for being with us today, Scott. Great pleasure as always. Just stay up, Scott. After wrapping up, I want to say something to you now.
Okay. Am I in trouble?